Hey everyone, this is Lauren, the Church Witch. I just wanted to do a quick video. I've had quite a few people ask me for just a little bit more of a focused, maybe 5-10 minute tutorial on tarot. I know I did one in the Rewilding Church Facebook page, but someone called me in the middle of it and it got real weird and got really fidgety and glitchy at the end. So I figured I would do a real quick 5 to 10 minute free video on tarot as a shadow work tool, a psychological tool, versus this concept of what we've been taught that's something to summon the devil. Because modern day tarot usage is definitely not that. And honestly, neither is modern witchcraft. And I'm going to do a whole different video on modern witchery. Let's keep this focused on tarot and oracle, right? So we'll keep this to 5-10 minutes. I'll tell you what I know. And then I have a 2.5-hour workshop that's up on my website that's $25. So if that's something that you're wanting to make an investment in, it's really amazing. I go through the history, I go through deconstruction, I address fears around old existing religious structures and all of that stuff. But just for now, let's focus on using tarot as an amazing psychological tool. So tarot essentially is a deck of 78 cards, okay? And the 78 cards are made up predominantly of 4 elements, all right? And that is air, water, sorry, I'm trying to think of, I'm already processing all the different pictures. So air is swords, cups is water, fire is wands, and the earth sign is pentacles or coins or discs, depending on what kind of deck you're using. Most people start with a Rider-Waite based deck. I'll go into that in just a second. I use Thoth. However, I started with Rider-Waite based, and then I moved into Thoth Tarot because it's more magical, it's more esoteric, and has astrology combined, and I'm a professional astrologer, so it makes a lot of sense. However, I do kind of recommend that people start with Rider-Waite. It's a lot more simple, and it's really helpful. And so with these 4 aspects, what you have is essentially the 4 alchemical elements, which is earth, wind, fire, water. So we have all of those aspects within us. We have all those aspects within nature, and all of those aspects are also within alchemy or magic or just in general, the world that we live in. And so each one has its own archetypal energy. And so what an archetype is basically a symbol that we know that's in us as humans. It's a part of our DNA. So one of the main little examples that I use would be when I say queen, what do you think of? And most people will say something like, oh, I see this, powerful woman on a throne, or with a crown on her head, or whatever, right? And so basically the idea of a queen is this powerful woman that is sitting in royalty that has the ability to make choices for herself. We have modern day queens. Our modern day queens now look like Beyonce. However, it's the same carrying on, right? It's the same thing of a goddess figure or a king, right? Or the emperor. And so within the tarot, we have these archetypes of energy, and that's all what it is. It is all about energy. And so where most people get tripped up with the idea of coming into a tarot practice, coming out of some sort of conservative or boxed in religious system, is that they think that they're going to see the future, right? Or they're going to summon some sort of dark energy. And the thing is that it's all about what you want. The main questions I always ask are what's your intention and what's your source? Because those 2 things right there can tell you a lot, all right? So if your intention is to inquire about yourself, then you're inquiring about yourself. If your source is one of love and light, then you're safe. And the reason for that, people kind of give me this weird thing, and the reason for that is because when people get into trouble with tarot or any type of spiritual tool, essentially what they're doing is they are expressing that they want their will so bad that they're willing to go to low level energy or dark energy to get what they want. I'm a white witch, right? Like good, bad, whatever. I don't know. I'm a shadow worker. My point is that what keeps me with so much within the Christian realm is I live my life by this kind of like theology of like ask, seek, knock, right? So I'm going to ask the question. I'm going to seek. I'm going to go and I'm going to like start looking into things. And if I feel, sense, or watch a door close, then I expect that it's not my door. All right. Like it doesn't mean it's not my door forever. It just means in that moment, it's not my door. Now that's not for everything. Like I do believe in willpower. I believe that sometimes we get, challenges that are presented in front of us and, we need to persist. I've got a couple of those things going on in my life right now where I use my intuition, which our instinct are like this magical concept. Really and truly, it's just our inner wise person. Is basically I press in and I'm like, is this for me? And I use all kinds of tools. I'll use kinesiology, body testing, pendulum, my intuition. Sometimes I can't use my intuition because my central nervous system is all queued up. It might be anxious, it might be overwhelmed, and I might actually not be able to make the right decision for myself in that moment. So that is when I like look to things like my coven, my sisters, my family, the people that I love who they know me, and I present them in counsel with like, this is what's going on. Can you give me wise counsel? Sometimes I have to look outside of myself. And sometimes I do look within myself. Sometimes I just have to wait. Sometimes I need to be quiet, not make any big decisions. Sometimes I need to give myself a lot of downtime. Sometimes I need to meditate. So it's like all of these things are basically, these rewilding practices are essentially coming back to the essential self, right? It's coming back to recognizing that like all of this world, we have worlds within us. And that is what tarot offers us, is this ability to basically mirror our own internal landscape in front of us. All right. So for example, most people think that getting into a tarot practice is like, I'm going to summon the devil, when really most of the time you're literally just like cussing at your cards because they call you the fuck out. Like your cards, the more that you use them, the more that you recognize them, the more that they will call you out. This is like having like a counsel in your back pocket. Now, that does not, hear me on this, that does not replace a therapist. That does not replace trauma therapy. That does not replace a good life coach or a spiritual advisor. It does not replace those things. It just gives you a focal point or a contemplative practice to know where to start digging into what we call the shadow. The shadow is the suppressed, hidden parts of our psyche that at some point in our lives, we decided like we couldn't press into those things because they were not acceptable by society, right? So it's like we have these things, these fears, these things that are in us. And guess what? What happens when we suppress things into the shadow realm is they go into the subconscious mind and the subconscious part of our body. It means they're not conscious anymore, because if they were conscious, we would know about them. And what happens when things get into the subconscious mind and body is that they start to play these storylines over and over and over. And we're not conscious that we're making all of these decisions based on really old fears from when we could have been like 5 years old. And so what happens is that when we start to crack into these parts that are hidden within ourselves through tools like tarot, that doesn't mean they're the only one. This is just a really easy, helpful one, is we can start to like kind of name these things in ourselves. It creates focal points for where we can start. And then we have this amazing healing practice for ourselves. It doesn't mean that you're only going to like look to your tarot. That's where it ends in your practice. No, it just starts the conversation. It starts the process. Because what happens in healing work is that we need to like first name it. What is it? Like what am I experiencing that is leading to this dis-ease, right? This lack of ease in my world. What is it? Maybe it's shame. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's like you didn't really get nurtured as a child. It's inner child like trying to come out and say like, don't abandon me, don't leave me. Like I'm worthy of love, right? So it's like these aspects of our psyche that need to be seen and a light needs to be shown on them. And like, if you come out of the Christian culture, a lot of that we've been told, we need to heal it. We need Jesus to heal it or whatever. And it doesn't mean that we don't get to heal it. But what happens is that we start to look at those things as like they're evil or they're demonic or they're these parts of ourselves that aren't worthy of love, that we need to fix those parts to be loved. And the thing is, like, what I believe about shadow work and psychoanalysis and witch work, right? Like all this spiritual alchemy is that there is no part of you that isn't loved. There is no part of you that isn't beloved. This is just us being humans. Like, humans are the ones that try to decide what's good and bad. God loves us exactly the way that we are. It doesn't mean we get to kill people. Like, no, we don't get to kill people. All right? No killing people. It just means that, like, when we use these tools and we get to shine a light on these aspects of ourselves, we can actually name them and work through them. But if we consistently just like shove down, like, maybe you're attracted to women, maybe you're a woman that's attracted to a woman, and you've buried that all of your life. And you know what? Eventually that's going to come out and manifest in different ways in your world. And something like tarot would call you out on that, right? And like, you don't even have to use tarot. It's really and truly just recognizing that this new opportunity of wild spirituality, of the holy wild, of rewilding this concept of church, is that we're all good. Our hearts are good and we are holy. And so, you know, like, this isn't really so much about like the tarot practice. The tarot practice is essentially just a way to like get into yourself. Okay. So what I typically recommend is that you get like a, you know, like a box of tarot cards, right? There's 78 cards in a box. And the way that it's broken down is into major arcana and minor arcana. Major arcana is the 22 trump cards. Yes, I'm sorry I have to say that. 22 trump cards that are all about major life events. Okay. Like everything that could happen in the story of life, the hero's journey, you can use in your tarot cards. All right. And then after that, our minor arcana is like the number cards and the court cards. So the court cards would be like the princess, I'm trying to think of all of the different decks, but basically like the queen, the king, the page, and the princess or the knight. And they all have these archetypal roles, right? And so those represent people in our lives. And then the number cards, they represent everyday life events. Okay, each number has its own arcana of what it's for. But essentially, this whole like storyline, once we start laying it out, we can start to lay out things in our world. And so I will tell you that if you're very, very cautious about using tarot in the beginning, which is totally fine, then just don't use future placement cards. Keep it fully focused on just yourself and don't worry about reading anybody else. Focus on you first. All right. So what you'll do when you get your box out is you're essentially just going to start shuffling your cards. Okay. And I like to use a purifying agent, like either essential oils or sage or rosemary or cedar, whatever you can find. If you're going to use sage, make sure that you're getting it from a place that is very reputable in how they're sourcing it. This right here is like rosemary and mugwort. And I like this one. It doesn't have sage in it, but it still works. It does keep, the sage is, you know, it is an indigenous plant. And also you got to be really careful with where you're sourcing it to make sure it's coming from a reliable source. This is, I think this is pine. And then I've got some sage here. You can also use Palo Santo, which is becoming similar to sage in the sense that, you know, they're trying to monitor the amount in which it's going out in the world for lots of different reasons. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to clear your deck. You're just going to clear any old stagnant energy, any energy that isn't yours, and you're going to claim your deck. So what you're going to do is you're going to take, here, I'll use this one. You're going to light a candle. White is what I recommend for protection. It doesn't have to be. You just ask the candle just to become a creative and protective force. You're going to call in your guides. So if you are in the Christian realm, all you do is just say like, hey, I'm just calling on Jesus and any energy that is aligned with Christ-centered energy. And I'm not open to any energies that aren't benevolent or in alignment with Christ-conscious energy. Okay. You get to claim your space. You really do. Like, they have to listen. And then what you're going to do is you're going to name your deck. You know, like, this is mine. This card, this deck is mine. I'm Lauren Burba. I'm the Church Witch, and these are my cards, and they work for me. If you are into essential oils, you could also, you know, create a sacred space by using something like frankincense. Just apply like a drop on the third eye just for clarity. And, you know, it's been used for forever, literally, to connect us to the divine. You just apply a little on your wrist, take a smell. And then you're going to shuffle your cards at least 10 times, especially if you just got them out of the box. Shuffle them for a while. And while you're shuffling them, again, all you're doing is just like claiming them for yourself. They're like a blank slate, right? Like they're yours. You can start to connect to your cards more. The more you use them, the more that you'll recognize them, the more they'll become a version of yourself. You could sleep with them. Like I sleep with my cards, like next to me. They start to take on more of like your own persona. They become kind of like an extension of yourself and a mirror of your soul. So like my professional deck, I don't let anyone touch my professional deck because that's my professional deck and I gotta be mindful. And then, you know, you have your deck, and I like to use things like crystals to keep them like nice and clear and ready. I clear my decks before and after each reading. And then the thing that you want to have with the tarot practice, which is literally just as important as having tarot cards, is you want to have a journal. All right. And so what you want to do when you're journaling is you want to date the page. It's so important. Date the page. What day is it? Write like a little paragraph, like, or like a sentence, like, this is what's going on in my world. You could be like, so-and-so broke up with me, or today is the first day of school. It doesn't matter, right? Like just something, because what will happen is as you do this, you'll start to go back and you'll look at your stuff and you'll be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. Like I knew, blah, blah, blah. It's really fun. And then what you're going to do is you're going to write down what you're trying to do. So most people, when they first start tarot, what I have them start with is like a 3-card a day pool. You can start to put more of intention to the cards that you're pulling. It's a lot of fun. But just to kind of get started and like crack open your practice, all you want to do is literally take your page like this. You're going to date it, which today is the 9th. And then the 19th. And what you're going to do is you're going to make a little picture. I'll show you. Okay. So see how it says 1, 2, 3. So what you're going to do is you're going to put the picture, and on card 1, it's going to be current energy. Okay. Or like, what do I need to see today would be the question. You know, what should I focus on today? I love to use tarot as a way to focus my energy around my work and my productivity. And then the other cards are what we call surrounding energy cards. So the 2 cards on the outside inform more about what's going on the inside. Okay. And so then what I do is, this is my intention. I'm going to take my cards and I'm going to shuffle them. And I'm going to hold the intention of, I need 3 cards. I need the first card, the center card, to be the energy that's going on for me presently, and then surrounding energy. So 3 cards, please. All right. And then I have like, spirit, can I get 3 cards? And then you just decide in the beginning, like how many times you're going to shuffle. In the beginning, I only shuffle 3 times, and then I laid them down. One of the other things a lot of people ask me is about reverse cards. In the beginning, I did not do reverse cards. That was too much for me. I couldn't handle all of that. But then once you have your deck, what you're going to do is you're going to lay them out in that way. So number 1, this is card 1, okay? And this is the Ace of Cups, all right? Yay. Then I'm going to have card 2, which is the Moon. And then I have card 3, which is the 9 of Wands, all right? And so what I have is I have 3 cards. The main energy card is the Ace of Cups, which is new beginnings in love and healing. On the other side of it, I have the Moon, which is a major arcana. And then I have the 9 of Wands. And so what I'm going to do on this thing is on 1, I'm going to write Ace of Cups. Number 2, I'm going to write the Moon. And number 3, I'm going to write the 9 of Wands. And then below, I'm going to write out what those things mean, which I know what they mean now, right? Like I'm a professional tarot reader. However, in the beginning, I didn't. And the more you write them down, the more that the psyche starts to process that and keep it. And then the more that you'll remember it, okay? And so what you're going to do is like I would write 1, which is Ace of Cups. I would write down a couple of little bullet points that stick out to me from whatever book that I'm using. And then I would put a little asterisk. And then I would say how does that resonate? Like, how is that sticking out? Does that make a lot of sense? If not, then I'm like, doesn't really resonate yet. And I might come back to it in like a month, the next lunar cycle. Okay. And then I move on to the next one. And then at the end, I'm like, if there's any other little thoughts that kind of come up in my mind, then I write those down, I close it up. And then the next day I do the same thing. And what happens is this becomes a journal practice. This becomes a way to center your day and to focus your day. It doesn't mean that I let my tarot cards tell me about my day. They just inform me about what's going on inside of me and around me, because it's not about what the tarot cards say. Please hear what I'm saying. This is really important. It's not about what the tarot cards say. It's important that you recognize what it triggers in you when you read it. Okay? That is so important that you recognize that piece. It's not about the cards. It's about your internal landscape. Like if you see the devil card pop up, what is the initial reaction, right? Like for me, when I see the devil card now, I see it as like, oh, something's binding me. I need to pay attention. Like I'm letting darker thoughts come through. But in the beginning, when I was coming out of evangelical Christianity, when I saw the devil card, I immediately projected fear. And so you have to recognize the fact that what these cards are doing is they're projecting your insights out in front of you so you can look at them. So when I see people come in that are afraid of tarot and like they pull the scariest like cards, like they'll pull the death card, the tower card, and like the devil card, is I realize very quickly they're projecting their fears onto their cards. So here's the thing. I think, me personally, I think tarot is actually more open to interpretation than any other spiritual tool there is. You could be super Christian minded and use tarot. When you get into oracle cards, which oracle is an amazing tool. I have literally like 100 oracle decks. I love them. But here's the thing about oracle is that oracle cards are already set. Okay. So like, this is one of my favorites. This is the Sacred Rebels. And so the oracle cards are somewhere between like 48 to 52 cards, depending on the author. And the theme is all about what the author is trying to do. And then the energy of the card is specifically dictated already by the author. Whereas tarot could be like so open to interpretation because it's all these different archetypes. And so it allows you to have more of an open perception of what it means. Whereas with an oracle card, it's very limited. Like it is very limited within the scope of the author that created the deck. So no matter what, if your psyche is afraid of tarot, don't start with tarot. Like get a super light oriented deck. Like I love the Work Your Light deck by Rebecca Campbell is one of my favorites to get people started with. And if you're afraid of tarot, pick a light oriented tarot deck. Like this one's really pretty. The Ethereal Tarot, it's like got gold on it. It's really light oriented. I also love the Wild Unknown Tarot, but some people think it's a little dark. I think it's beautiful, but again, I'm a Scorpio, and so like I'm a weirdo. But truly, like what you want to recognize is that tarot is, I'm sorry, I'm looking for one more deck, but I realized I think I have it upstairs. What you want to recognize though is that the tarot cards are like, yeah, some people can use them to predict the future and do all of those things. If you have no interest in that, then don't do that. Keep the cards focused on present moments, okay? Keep the cards focused on an internal space. So like, for example, old school tarot would be something like, would be a question like, does so-and-so like me? How can I make so-and-so like me? Whereas modern tarot is like, what are the qualities that I need to work on to attract the kind of guy that's like this? Like, that's the difference now, right? Like, we're moving past this old, you know, like, not that there's anything wrong with it. That's like historical tarot and all those things. Like, I love those things. But for the most part, what I'm talking about is using tarot as basically like a psychological tool, shadow working tool, internal landscape, centering prayer. Like it's just an amazing way to pull things out of yourself. And for me as a life coach, it's an amazing way to pull things out of my clients. Like I have clients tell me all the time, I work with therapists all the time. And they're like, you pulled more out of me in 10 minutes than I did in working with my client for 10 years. And I'm like, yeah, because I mean, it creates a starting point, right? It's like, oh, this is what's going on. And they're like, yes, it is. And it's because I understand the language of archetypes and you can understand them too. Right? So this is kind of like my like quick, I know we've gone past 10 minutes at this point. I don't even know how long it is, but if you've worked with me, you know that I tend to shove a lot of information to a very small amount of things. But here's the last thing I kind of want to land with. And that is especially for all my deconstructing Christians. And that is the fact that, you know, tarot is a spiritual tool, but so is the Bible. The Bible is a spiritual tool. And the Bible was meant for love and for growth and light and freedom, right? Like spiritual freedom. And guess what? That book that has helped so many people has also been the cause of millions of people dying. Truly, right? So it's like the tool, it's not about the tool, it's about the user. It's about the intention of the user. So it's the same thing with tarot, right? If your intention is to hold it with love and light and to be in this like place of vulnerability and beauty, you know, to learn about yourself, what is your motivation? What's your intention? Who's your source, right? It can be used for love. It can be used for light. It can be used for growth and expansion, or it could be used as a tool to manipulate, to control people, and to bring death. Same thing as the Bible. So it's all about perception. And like my hope is to continuously challenge your lens and your perception to open you up so that you can get free. Because the only thing that isn't freeing you is yourself. Truly, like this is your permission to be free, to like get into yourself and love yourself fully and wholly, because you're good. Your heart is good and you are loved and you are beloved and you're holy. Okay. All right. Hopefully this was helpful to you. Last thing, if you go to my website, www.themysticandmundane, go to my shop, you'll see that 2.5-hour workshop where I like really dive in to all of the things. I just kind of touched on them here. I show you a lot of different things. There's also layouts for all the different kinds of tarot spreads you can do. And that is in my shop at, again, my website, www.themysticandmundane.com. And I am Lauren, the Church Witch, and I hope this was helpful to you. And I hope that you have a great day. Bye.